Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Rich Souls. This is Saara, your host, and I'm so thrilled today to have my friend Akash Kanojia on the show. He is such an interesting human. As you'll hear as we go through the conversation, his way of thinking is just so unique and I think valuable. Like, as his friend, I just get so much value from hearing how he relates to the world. And I hope that you feel the same. I am very optimistic that you will indeed feel the same. But to shed a little bit of light on Akash's background, we talk a bit about his career, but I just want to paint the picture of like who this man is and like what makes him so interesting. So in his career, he's been a bond trader, a portfolio manager, a consultant, a law professor, a legislative staffer. He's been a twice failed entrepreneur, and he worked with the Fed on a huge bailout. And he has spent the past 8 years in a men's group going through a thoughtful process of emotional excavation and alchemy consistently every single week for 8 years. It's a lot. It's a lot. Even for people who are in like the self-development, self-help, spiritual world, that is a lot. And it makes for a very fascinating human being who has a perspective that I think not a lot of people have, because there's a lot of us who focus on the self-development work, like me, put myself in that category. And there are people who might just be more in, whether it's finance or law or other, like hard industries or areas, or the way that we end up talking about is like left brain versus right brain. Not that any of it's verse. We're all human beings. We're on the spectrum. And in that, we can actually hold these different dualities and find our own unique mix of them. And I think Akash does that so beautifully. And yeah, it just makes for a really interesting conversation. So I hope you enjoy. And with that, I'm going to send you into the episode. Enjoy. I know we have you for about an hour. And so I'm going to, I think, tell the listeners a bit about your background more in the intro, because it's so long, winding, and interesting. But I do want to hear in your own words how you would describe your career.
I'm a finance guy, and that is something that I discovered on accident. So I tried a bunch of other stuff. I was a lawyer, I was a management consultant, and everything I've done in my career has been driven by what am I more interested in. So when I went to law school, I was at a law firm for one summer, took the bar, ultimately decided that being a consultant sounded more interesting, even though it was less compensated. And so then I tried that. I did like it more than law. I didn't love it. And then I stumbled into finance in my consulting work, thought that was more interesting than consulting. And that's how I got to where I was. So pretty much everything I do is driven by, am I interested in this or not?
I feel like a lot of people can take an initial step or even series of steps, and they find themselves committed to a vision that they had for themselves. Like, oh, I'm in law, I'm going to be a lawyer. And it can be, and you tell other people, it becomes the social circle you surround yourself with ends up being a lot of your peers. And it's the world that you learn of, like, as an industry, as you go deeper into it. How did you relate to that as you were making the transition from law to finance?
So I never had my identity attached to these things to begin with. And some of it is probably nature. So the two areas that I like in career stuff is entrepreneurship and investment. And in both of these fields, a person has to be unattached to past decisions. So there's this notion of sunk costs, or in the investing world, if a trade is a bad trade, if an investment is a bad investment, we just get out. Think of it as ripping the Band-Aid off. And I've learned this lesson the hard way. I used to be a money manager and manage significant amount of money. And I lost $750,000 on my first trade. And the reason I should have lost $250, It was a trade. It was a reasonable trade idea. We had a very clear stop loss at 250K. So meaning if the trade goes against us and we lose $250,000, that's when we're going to get out. So no harm, no foul. It's just that's how the investment world works. So within the first 2 days, the trade was underwater. And so rather than following our investment discipline and getting out, I went to my colleagues and my boss and was like, hey, I still believe in this trade. I think we should stay in it. And I managed to convince them. And then we stayed in it and we lost 3x the amount of money that we had in our stop loss. And so when we hit minus 750K, that's when my boss was like, all right, you're getting out, period. I don't want to hear it anymore. So that was my very first trade. So I learned that lesson the hard way. And I would say in the context of a long investment career, learning that lesson at the very beginning at actually a cheap price, 750K, when we're talking about a portfolio of 30 billion euro, that's like, I'm never making that mistake again because I did it at the very beginning of my career. It's the first thing that I did. So, and investing, I mean, entrepreneurship is exactly the same. We come into the market with a product idea. The market hates it. So now we can double down and sink 2 years into it, or we can accept what is the market telling us. The market doesn't want it. Customers don't want this product. So what do entrepreneurs do? They pivot. Investors cut their losses and entrepreneurs pivot. So for me, it's like, okay, so going to law school, that's a sunk cost. It was a trade that didn't work, or it's a market I thought I would like, and then after trying it, I didn't like it. So I could sign up for another 40 or 50 years of feeling very ambivalent about my work, or just accept, okay, I burned 3 years, cut my losses here and do something else. Ultimately, the decision, it's internal. Like, does this work for me? Yes or no? And what I heard in your question, well, what if we tell other people? Well, that's the problem. Like other people.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, in the examples that you gave, because I think you wrote an article on this, the story you just described. And if I remember correctly, although I read that and I feel like November, so I could not be remembering this correctly, and it's now May, is that you had some ego involved with that suggestion to your team. Am I remembering that correctly?
Well, there's always ego involved.
There's always ego, yeah. But I guess because, okay, so what we're talking about is like egos and like not wanting to be wrong when we're talking about sunk costs, like considering not wanting to have been wrong about a decision. And then also just recognizing like, oh, I'm actually not enjoying this. And those things can get conflated because then you don't enjoy being wrong. And you want to believe that you are right and was right to begin with. So I'm just curious, like, how do you delineate that sense of, like, my initial take was correct, and I'm going to hold to this, even if the results don't show, and, oh, I made a poor decision and we need to pivot?
So for me, it's more that if this is a game that I want to play, let's call it investing, but it's also true in entrepreneurship. If this is a game that I want to play, and I decide that from the beginning, the game has certain rules of the road. And in markets, one of the rules of the road is that you will be wrong, and you will be frequently wrong. So either you can accept that or you can't. And people who can't accept that, they wash out really quick because they hold on to a 750K loss and then keep doubling down, and then they're out of capital. And so, like, let's say that was my fund and I burned through 30 billion euro. I would never work again in the field. People like me have spent a lot of time reading about investing too. So we know the right and wrong behaviors. And so being unable to cut losses, like it's a wrong behavior for that industry.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also starting to now pivot to like outside of that industry, just as a human being making decisions in the world, because those principles, as you talk about on your blog, the principles in finance are very much so linked to emotions. And I think, yeah, it's just a lot of people, including myself, don't want to find themselves wrong. And a recent lesson I learned is not wanting to be wrong in my like domain of expertise, or what I perceive my domain of expertise to be. But what you just shared on just understanding, like, it's in human nature to be wrong, and for also like the world to just have unpredictable like volatility at times. It's just like understanding this is a reality. And the ego can come in and say, like, oh no, I pretend to be the master of it or to be in control of it or fully understand the variables. And it's like, it's just not true. So if you just put that down and you just understand, like, no, it is unpredictable and I don't know everything, it can be easier. It seems like it could be easier to just pivot, especially if you're not attached to.
Let me offer you a different perspective that might make this easier for listeners. What would it mean if I was 30 or 35 in my chosen field and I was right 100% of the time? What would that actually mean about me and my field? If I was right 100%
that you're bored? Or I don't know.
Either the field is too easy.
Yeah.
Or I already know everything and there's nothing left to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the implications of being in a field where I'm 30 or 35 and I'm right 100% of the time and there's nothing left for me to learn in that field?
I would think that somebody would be dissatisfied.
For me, it would be unbearable.
For some people, yeah, it would be, immense dissatisfaction. Some people might be okay with that level of complacency as long as they get to feel like the big fish.
So that's very important for a person to understand which of those buckets they come into. So this comes back to just what's true for me internally. For me, learning and curiosity is maybe my highest core value. And that's why I like this field that I'm in, because there's an infinite amount of things to learn. I could spend my entire career studying this field and still know 20% of what's out there or less. And so for me, that's not demoralizing. That's exciting. It feels like a worthy endeavor. And the implication of that is that at age 30 or 40, there's no way I know even 5% of my field. So even though I might be an expert relative to the general population that doesn't even know 1%, that still means that there's 95% of the knowledge out there that I don't know. And if that's the case, then I'm going to be wrong frequently. Hopefully I'm less wrong than somebody who's a total novice.
So you've mentioned that your desire essentially has been your key driver throughout your career. And I think this like starts to parlay into the healing work that you've done. So can you give a brief background on what that work has looked like?
Yeah, I'm in a men's group and we basically do internal emotional processing in a verbal group format. So we get together once a week. We started out with really long meetings, 4 or 5 hours, and now we've cut them down to 2. I've been at it for 8 years, but it's essentially purely emotional exploration. For me, it's been enormously beneficial. It's so unrelated to everything else I do. And the way I would compare it is, imagine I eat a diet of only meat. Well, I might stand to gain a lot by eating even one vegetable or fruit in my diet. Just like meat is great, but lacks probably some nutrients that are in plant matter. So adding even one plant to my diet improves my overall health and nutrition significantly.
And has that group been consisted of the same people?
We've had extremely low turnover. So in 8 years, I think we've had a total of 12 members. Currently have 8. So I think something like 4 new guys, maybe 5, maybe 13 new members, 13 total members over the course of 8 years.
How do people find the group? How did you find the group?
I formed the group with a small handful of guys. So I met 2 guys at a men's retreat through an organization that is now defunct. It was called Everyman. I don't know if it's still operational anymore. And we met at a retreat in December of 2017. I found the work eye-opening because I had never done anything like that before. And then there were 2 other guys there that were interested in forming a group. And we were like, all right, let's start a weekly group that just does what the stuff that we did at the retreat. We just do it on our own every week. And so these guys recruited other men that were interested, and then that's how it started. And so now generally, if we have a spot, then we'll inquire with people in our network and ask, hey, such and such might be a good fit for us.
I think that's just interesting, valuable of sharing how you came to be in this group that you've been committed to now for 8 years, because I think so many people who go into healing don't want to do it in a silo. And some people like me, like do incline towards doing it in a silo, but the value is much richer if we can, I think, have both and go to community. Like the healing goes so much deeper when you're like seen in your stuff, but it's like finding the right people to do that with that I think is very hard. And we talk about that even just like with friendship or dating, is just finding the right people. And I always think of, yeah, just going to events or groups that you think that you would like or that you resonate with because you've seen what they do on the internet. Just like try it out, because it might actually be a great opportunity to overlap with people who share similar values to you. And what a beautiful outcome, 8 years of doing this. And it's such like your I always like think of it as somatic intelligence, but it is like somatic emotional intelligence, I suppose. Obviously they're like very much related, but it's just such a unique thing about you that I think so many people appreciate, especially given your background in law and finance. It's like these worlds usually don't mesh. And here you are having merged them and being able to add value in each of those worlds with your knowledge of them. Okay, so I think I read this or heard this, I can't remember now, but about within your group at a certain point, it was that almost everyone, if not everyone, had left their W-2 jobs. What do you think that's about?
Two things. One is there's this saying that we're the product of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And so we see this in all types of associative groups where the group in general shifts in one direction, we feel a pull to shift in that same direction. And if we feel very strongly against that, we probably just end up leaving the group. So that's one thing. Second thing is that leaving a W-2 job, at least in the case of my group, which is overall a highly entrepreneurial group of people, just by coincidence, that was not by choice. It was just, that's who randomly ended up in the group. First, one guy taking a leap inspired other guys to take a leap. And then second, we work on fear a lot. So what keeps a lot of people, I'll use the word stuck, but not everybody's stuck. Just because somebody works in a W-2 job doesn't mean that they're stuck. But there are people who are stuck. And it's the safety and the comfort of having everything steady and organized that people don't want to leave. So if I leave a steady paycheck where I know that a certain amount of money is going to come in every month, then the world becomes scary. And then that's a process of confronting fear. And I think all of us did that in our own way. So people have, at the time I wrote that, I think we had 7 members. 5 became entrepreneurs in some one way or another, and then 2 became therapists. And the guys who became therapists, one was a former software engineer, the other guy was a former lawyer. So they just realized these highly left brain things were not their true calling. And so they're left brain guys that pivoted very consciously. They're like, this is not for me. I want to do this emotional work 100% of the time. The rest of us were probably business-minded left brain guys. And we felt that, okay, this emotional somatic stuff, this just gives us a competency that we didn't have before. That's how I look at it. I don't know how the other entrepreneurial guys look at it, but they're not like right brain guys by nature. They're more left brained by nature.
What do you think that skill of emotional intelligence adds to the world of business or to you as an entrepreneur?
I'll give you one example. So during COVID, I was at the Federal Reserve and the market went off a cliff in March. Basically everything froze, stock market crashed, etc. I joined one of the Federal Reserve's rescue facilities. Essentially, it's like a bailout fund, effectively. And it was a very short time horizon. So I was pulled into the group on March 18th. We told the market that this thing is going live on April 14th. Effectively, what that means is we're launching a new product in less than a month, a new financial product, basically. So an enormous amount of work. And I was the number 2 guy, effectively the COO of that team. And on that, I had 10 direct reports to me and 50 total people on the team. I think my EQ skills were the most valuable component of what I added because the stress level was through the roof on that. And I had 2 team members that basically had emotional breakdowns from the stress during that period. And if I didn't have the what I will call emotional leadership qualities, I don't think I could have gotten their heads back in the game. And so like the people above me didn't even see that. And so I would say as a business leader, businesses are a function of the people who work inside them. So what kind of leader can help a person perform at their best capacity? And I believe strategic subject matter knowledge, expertise in your field, strategic vision, communications, all of those are important, but also just the emotional dynamic of how people feel when they show up at work. I think that's super underrated. And I experienced it firsthand. I mean, I saw it in a crisis situation.
Yeah.
We launched 3 days ahead of schedule. Those team members turned out fine. I mean, it was stressful, but they were like, we made it.
I imagine it could have been different from person to person, but how did you help them navigate a full-on breakdown in the midst of a crisis situation that maybe you had your own feelings around?
I mean, at that point, I'd already been doing men's work, I think, for 3 or 4 years. So I had a lot of experience with different types of emotional states. By nature, I'm a person who's pretty cool in a crisis. That's always been the case. And yeah, I didn't think, I just acted. It was this somatic intelligence that I'd already spent time developing, and I just used it.
You didn't even try to necessarily soothe them. It just was a matter of relating to them in the state that they were, and that ultimately helping soothe them.
I just treated it as a normal Tuesday in men's group. That's all it is. I don't do this stuff consciously. I've trained it so much that everything's second nature at this point. So I don't even know what I do.
Totally. Yes. I've been thinking about that recently. Of that when you're doing something new, obviously you're not going to know anything about it. And that's why building a habit, like I just released a solo episode this week about like my practices and how doing them daily is really where the needle moves, because then without even realizing it, for example, with like breath work or using somatic tools, I'm like actually using them in everyday life and regulating in real time, not just in the container of the morning, but it's through the container of the morning practices that I'm building that almost unconscious habit that I can then incorporate into my life, and that will just help me navigate it with more clarity. And so I think it just speaks to, especially with you, with the men's group, of just having that like regular cadence. Is it weekly? Weekly. It's so powerful for 8 years. That's crazy.
It's an unbelievable amount of hours at this point. And it's focused training. We show up. It's no logical discussion is allowed at all. It's purely emotional, purely somatic. And so that doesn't come naturally to people like us. So when any human being trains that many hours at any skill, it's impossible to not become good.
Okay. I feel like this is almost a natural segue into talking about the Artist's Way cohort, because it's just, that was a group. So background, and I have an article on this on my Substack, but last year we did the Artist's Way together and with a couple of our other friends. And I accidentally had the idea, put the group together, but I found it interesting throughout the process of like organizing these meetings and the actual structure of them around highly emotional content. And so I'm even thinking like even in relation to that article, it's about like how to start an Artist's Way cohort and like kind of how we had structured it. And I'm curious just to like break it down for listeners in case they're like thinking like, oh, I do want to have a group. I want to be the start of the group, or maybe I even am a part of a group already, but I feel like there are ways to optimize it, or rather to make it more conducive to less mental processing and more emotional processing. Do you have any tips for people on like how they could structure these groups, or like how have you guys structured it in a way that's led, like how do you actually turn down the logical processing and practice to allow the emotional processing?
By going to these everyman retreats, we were trained in the method. So how to guide a conversation, how to recognize when a guy is in his stories or in his head, and how to get him into his body. So it's just practicing those skills. And for me, a lot of it was also becoming more somatically aware of what's going on in my own body and noticing, is my awareness in my body or is it in my head? So that all just comes with practice. This is a weak recommendation, not a strong one, because it's just an initial reaction and it may not hold. But I think the groups that are the most valuable are the ones that have mandatory attendance. Doesn't matter what it is or what you're doing. I think when it's more drop in and people skip and sometimes people don't come, it just really weakens whatever you're trying to get done there. As a group, it's the shared commitment and the understanding that this is a sacrifice and there's going to be times that we don't want to do it and we do it anyway. That consistency is my current belief, is that consistency is what's needed to drive progress. So I don't think it matters what specifically you do in the group. You can find a zillion blueprints online for different things. You can have AI probably write you a decent, go synthesize best practices from like 50 men's groups. You could start there.
But it's like, again, it comes back to finding the right people.
Yeah, and you don't know who the right people are. There's going to be people that opt out pretty quickly. And then what I've realized, we just have to let those people go. We can't force somebody to do something that they internally don't want to do. So the best thing to do is to find like-minded people, whether or not on the surface they seem similar to us or not, and then move forward. And I think it's the best when the people are roughly at the same level of experience and skill.
But also that you can't orchestrate that.
Well, so if I'm a very, very skilled person with a group of novices, I just won't participate in the group. That'll be obvious.
Or you'll end up in a teacher dynamic.
Yeah. So if I'm leading a group, that's different. I used to lead a men's group in Austin. That was very different. But that's different from a group in which I'm hoping to be a participant. Like, for example, in the Artist Way group, I don't think any of us were none of us were veteran authors in that group. We were all doing some writing with various degrees of consistency.
Or otherwise creating.
Yeah.
Everybody had a creative venture that they came in with, or at least a connection to their creativity that they were looking to refine their relationship with. And also we all just wanted to finish the book because we'd all gotten to chapter 2 or 3 and we're like, okay, what is this actually about?
So that's what I mean by being on the same wavelength. So we had all of us had heard about this book or tried it separately before. We had all roughly attempted to tackle it once, and we all made it to the first third of the book and then stopped. So we were very similar in terms of development in the context of that book.
Yeah. And I think everyone also was a leader in their own right. Like in whatever their jobs were, their extracurriculars were, like everybody was in the hat of like being a leader and kind of like forging a new territory. So I know we had the like kind of rule of like, you don't necessarily need to do what Julia Cameron says to do in the Artist's Way, like with the daily morning pages and the weekly artist dates, but it's like you pick something that you think is best for you and your system, and you commit to that through the duration as best you can. And I think some, purists wouldn't have liked that in our group, right? But because we all understood, like, we're comfortable forging our own path and knowing what's going to actually work for us, we're okay with that, and we appreciate the accountability from the group. So the Artist Way, I want to go deeper into that because I think it also, I guess, a little bit more context on our group. Just like such a funny medley of people that I'm kind of remembering of like, we had Megan, who's like super people person, totally like, but also very much into play, she's such a special human being, but like just this dimension of like, I guess, femininity, I would say, is like a hallmark of her. And then we had Mitchell, who's like business, career, AI optimization man. And then we had Rodney, who's actually extremely interesting in his sense because he's in biology, specifically with like bacteria, studying bacteria. It's like a whole world. I have no idea. I'm forgetting now. But he also is like deeply emotionally and like mystically intelligent, which is like, again, not something you see. And then of course your finance and law and emotions, and then whatever one could call me. I don't really know what I would say, like mystical, but also like practical, I guess is how I tend to put it. And, uh, as we went deeper into the process, it's like the guys, I don't want to say the guys, I'm going to say you. We'll talk about like our experiences because we're the ones who are here and can speak to them. But you brought up, I want to say it was like week 5 or 6 or maybe 7. You're like, yeah, this isn't like no shade to Miss Cameron, but I have a problem with the artist way or an element of the artist way. Can you speak to the friction that you hit in her book?
I don't remember specifically what was on my mind at that week, but I want to level set. So I like Artist's Way. I think it's a great book, and I think Julia Cameron is a fantastic author and a fantastic teacher. That being said, not every development program is ideal for each person. Different people need different things. So the early part of Artist's Way is a lot about what are my emotional blocks around creating. So give yourself permission, like tap into your anger, like all that kind of stuff is early. So for me, I did much of that my first couple of years in men's group. So that wasn't my block with respect to creating. So that's why maybe that's why I didn't stick with it the first time, but it became clear the second time that like, I don't need this. Like all these questions that she's saying are blocks. I don't have these blocks. I have other challenges, but not these. So that was my reaction to Artist's Way. If I didn't have the experience of men's group, I would have gotten, I think, much more benefit out of it because they're unearthing similar challenges for people. So I don't think you need both, or at least I didn't need both.
Well, I feel like the issue that surfaced for you, and I want to say maybe Mitchell too, is towards the end, especially of the morning pages specifically. Because the practices, it's like you wake up and you're straight into your morning practices. You're writing 3 pages. It's a stream of consciousness. And the idea is essentially emptying out and building a relationship to your creative side. And I remember you distinctly saying like, I don't want to do that. Like I am already unearthing things in men's group and I want to just get straight to the work. And the friction that I'm hitting is my resistance to actually sitting down and doing the work, which is when you picked up
Pressfield.
Yeah.
Pressfield is also something that I've had on my shelf for a long time and read it before and found it apropos. Over the last 3 months, what I've discovered is much more about how my creative process works. That's really what I've been in men's group for the last 3 months. Almost every week, what I've been talking about is nuances about my own creative process and just where my mind. I don't have like a lot of emotional blocks around creation. What I've learned is if I think of my creative energy as a fire, it needs fuel. So the most consistent practice I have to build is how do I put fuel into the fire? It's not like the fire's blocked by a wall of anger or fear. It's just the fire is burning low and it needs gasoline or wood or charcoal or something thrown on it. So what is that for me? And for me, that's reading. So that's where my genesis for ideas comes from. So if you're interested, I can share basically my current understanding of my own creative process.
Yeah, please do. I've been curious since the Artist's Way.
Yeah, so it's not like a very emotional process at this point. For me, I have to do a lot of reading. So reading catalyzes things that happen in my brain. For me, speaking and writing perform similar functions. Speaking and writing is my process of organizing my thoughts and ideas. And it's usually in that process of either speaking, because for your audience, so my day job is I teach finance at UT. So that is hugely beneficial to me because I study the market regularly and then I'm leading lectures about what's going on in the market. So even during class, as I'm speaking, and I don't have half of my classes are not prepared lectures. Half of them are just ad libs. So just my thoughts about the market. And it's a discussion with students. It's in that discussion process that my thoughts become organized and crystallized. Same thing with my writing. I've said for years, I've been writing now consistently on my blog for about 3 years. And I say I write to organize my own thoughts. Like the audience is secondary. So that's my process. So I have to read, I have to ingest. My brain comes up with a lot of random stuff. And then it's unstructured. And it's the communication process, whether spoken or written, that my brain organizes that information. Then I feel satisfaction. So I can't just read things and learn them without communicating them. That's just how I operate. Because if I don't, my brain is just not satisfied.
How do you go into your lectures ad-libbing?
What do you mean?
So do you choose a topic or theme or a direction based on recent reading that you're planning to lecture on, and then you just riff off of that? Or
so my class meets twice a week. And so my Wednesday, Thursday sections, so I teach a Monday, Wednesday, and a Tuesday, Thursday. So Wednesday and Thursday are prepared lectures. So I have slides and I go through them. They're historical financial crises typically. But it's very discussion driven. So I like to teach according to the law school Socratic method. So sometimes I'll have a slide and the slide will just be a question and I'll ask the students, what do you think? And then that might lead to a 15-minute discussion based on where the students go. And then Monday, Tuesday is a discussion about the market. So I have talking points. So I generally on Sunday, I spend 5-6 hours just synthesizing my thoughts about the market, put it into a 5-6 page document with just like bullet points, and then come in on Monday. And then I just ask students, the first thing I almost always say is, so what happened since the last time we talked? And they have the handout. They can read off the handout if they want. But on a typical day, we'll use 30% of what I prepared. The other 60-70% is like students, they'll go, this thing happened. And this is where I feel I benefit from my 10-ish years of experience in the field. I've seen a lot of stuff. So I can field a lot of questions from students. And so you'd have to come to the class to see, but it's a discussion-based class. And so students say, well, I saw this news story. Then I ask them, what do you think it means? And then if I happen to know something about that, I'll go on a side tangent and say, here's how to analyze it. Here's an example. Here's a previous case that happened in finance. That's all from my memory. And so that's why the reading is, again, very important to me, and synthesizing the thoughts, because every piece that I write or every conversation that I have, some additional nugget of knowledge gets added to this library. And then I have a bigger and bigger library over time.
What do you do with what you read? As in, do you take personal notes? Do you highlight? Do you dog your pages? All of the above?
I find it very useful. I usually don't write in the book, but I usually like to have a notebook with me. When I was a consultant, one of the things that was drilled into me was compulsive note taking. It's a great habit. And even the best traders I know also are compulsive note takers. So writing a lot, handwriting. And generally in business meetings, I will be, even if I'm the most senior person in the meeting, I'm taking notes, even if nobody else is. And that just helps me to stay organized and stay focused.
Have you started using AI note takers?
I haven't, but there's something about the physical handwriting for me that's important.
Totally. I get that. I'm curious what you would think about them. I'm even curious do you use AI, really?
Oh, all the time. But I use AI mostly for research, and then I use it for editing. I don't use it for writing. I hate AI. I have to prompt Claude, like, I want to have a discussion about this. Don't write the thing for me. That writing process I need for my own mental organization. And I just hate it. All of this is for my own learning.
Which again comes back to you having the awareness of learning being one of your key values in life. I'm still doing morning pages. And for me, it is a process of emptying out when I'm writing. Emotionally, sometimes it's just the mental chatter. But it is frustrating because it gets in the way of actually working. It's only 15 minutes of my day, but I'm still grappling with this. Like, I mean, I've been doing morning pages on and off for a while. So I think a part of it is like, maybe I should just come to peace with this as like a method that works for me and just figure out how to slot it in my day. But for you, that emptying out process really does happen through weekly men's group, it sounds like.
So sometimes I don't have emotional stuff that I need to empty. I have cognitive stuff. So I have tons and tons of 75% written pieces that I haven't published because I kind of get what I need to get out of my system. And then it doesn't feel like there's enough there for an audience focused piece. So like sometimes I have a thesis or a hypothesis and I start to explore it. I research it. I write a lot of stuff. And then I find out that my hypothesis is not correct. And so then I just abandon that piece of work right there because like that's my emptying process. It's a lot of like cognitive stuff.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So I'm not doing it daily, but I have a similar writing process where I'm getting stuff out of my system.
And then you're not publishing those pieces because really it sounds like in your case, those pieces are dead ends. They're not just like philosophical problems that you're turning over in your mind that you can incorporate into the story. It's like, no, this is like a theory that you had about something in the world of finance that's not true. And so you have got to put it down.
One process where emotions comes into my writing, I have to have an emotional charge as the catalyst. So I have a somatic charge, which to me, I have some conversation or I read something and then I'll feel a hit in my body. So that process for me always starts with that emotional thing. And then I'm like, all right, now I have to feed this energy with more information. And then the brain takes over and does all this cognitive work. And at the end, it comes down to, well, if that spark goes away, that's how I know it's a dead end. Yeah, people say my work is highly emotionally charged, like my writing. Even if it sounds logical at the beginning, people say like from the first sentence, we can tell that you're angry.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, what does that spark feel like for you?
For me, I always describe it as an electric charge. So I get goosebumps or I can feel like my beard standing on end. That's what it feels like for me. And it's the same feeling I get when I have an aha moment. Well, something just like clicks, finally. I've been studying something for a long time. And that's an emotion and somatic sensation that I enjoy. And that's actually why I love teaching, because it is almost as enjoyable to see somebody else have that aha moment for me, which is my students. So like when something finally clicks and they get it, I get a charge also from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my joy. That's my joy.
Yeah. I know you get excited, even just like being your friend. You get excited when other people are excited about the things that they're excited about or having their own aha moments. Yeah. And my brain is just, of course, naturally going to human design. For anybody who's listening if you're listening to this, you probably have some sense of human design. Akash is a 2/4 emotional generator, I believe. Did I get that right?
I don't remember.
You just asked me recently. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's 2/4 emotional generator. And so much of what you just said is just that. And like for me, also being an emotional generator, it's broadening my mind of like what that experience can feel like. And I think when I'm hearing you speak about it, I think it really is a testament to how much emptying out you truly have done over the years that you continue to do through this like emotional cultivation work. Even though you're not even emptying out anymore, you're still kind of like flexing that muscle and like nourishing that part of yourself, and it's feeding into your work. I feel like, this is where we get into that conversation of like the in-between people or the people in the middle. Like, so we were talking about this other day of like, I remember like the words exactly we had, but I just think of it as like almost the Alex Hermosis and like the Goggins of the world that are like really output driven. Maybe not even thinking about emotions. It's like, if anything, that's not something you even need to pay attention to. Just focus on the output, show up every day, do the thing. And then you have, I think, the people who, like, I would actually categorize myself like kind of closer to on the spectrum of like more, doing more self-development work, kind of more introspective, doing more of that emotional work, but that not always translating to the output. And then you know, have the people that are closer to the middle. And I feel like you are like, just again, like you're kind of what I consider like an expertise from you of like finance, law, and then emotions. Like you are like, you bridge the middle. And I feel like you have such a good radar for people who are at the middle. And I guess I'm just curious, what do you think like one side has to learn from the other?
So for the record, I have no problem with Alex Hormozy. I have no idea who Goggins is.
Oh, David Goggins.
Yeah, I have no.
You don't know him?
I don't know who that is. But
Okay.
at least I'm not a big believer in work-life balance. I tell my students that if we like our work, then we want to do a lot of it. So I have no issue with that viewpoint at all. I don't know Hormozy personally. I assume he likes what he does, and he enjoys it. So that's why he does it, and he does a lot of it. I don't have a problem with that. What I'm more referring to the people that have only logical development of the brain and are not aware of their own internal emotional experience. And I just feel that it makes a person fragile, period. And then the opposite perspective is people that spend all this time on inner work, but inner work in a vacuum also isn't valuable because it has to be tested against the outside world. So does this actually produce better results for me in the outside world on what I want? And so people that are perpetually in this inside not testing environment, to me, it's just going around in a circle.
I guess it goes back to the analogy you gave earlier of like, if you're eating mostly meat, you could probably benefit from the micronutrients that would come with eating just a little bit of veggies. And I think that's the case regardless of where you are on that spectrum, to have a little bit of the opposite, or to do a little bit of even, I would say have a little bit of the opposite, but even if you have a natural inclination towards one is in some cases, and I try to practice this, I'm trying to practice this a lot right now, but to do the opposite of what you would normally do.
I'm just saying in terms of development. So if, for example, I'm a very spiritually minded person and I struggle to get basic execution tasks done, is that a skill set I can develop? As in, I'm going to be a reliable person and do what I say what I'm going to do. So if somebody gives me a complicated project, I can figure out X, Y, Z needs to be executed. I have timelines. I get everything done on time. I just pound through it. There's people who can't do that, and there's people who can. So if you're one of the people that can't do that, that's a learnable skill. And in my opinion, it's a necessary one to just be effective in the world. That's more what I'm referring to.
So I was talking to somebody the other day kind of about this dynamic, and we were referencing people who are very big in the world. Like you could even say like Elon Musk, like Jeff Bezos, like whoever you would categorize as being like considered successful in the world of business. And that there's this kind of pattern among some of them, maybe not the people that I just mentioned, but there's like a pattern, like let's say with Tim Ferriss, where it's like they hit a certain level of success, and then they go into like all of this kind of introspective and like self-development work. But it's like, it seems to be after they've hit success. And then they realize like, oh, these are the conditions that I put myself in, or the thought patterns that I've had that actually allowed me to hit this place. And like, and it allowed me to hit this place. Yes. But there are also now that I've hit that place, I see now how it also detracts from my experience of the place that I was trying to get to. And the point that came up that I'm kind of like still tossing in my mind is like, it seems like at least the way they tell the stories is like, it's only after they hit that level of success that they start to do, let's say, the meditation or go to the retreats or seek therapy, whatever the modality is, or are that they end up going to. The question I've been thinking of is like, can someone achieve huge success, significant success without, or how does somebody achieve a high level of success while also tending to their inner world and also being extremely industrious and doing what's needed to actually hit a certain level of success?
Inner work makes us more effective in the world. So I'll give you an example. Since you brought up Tim Ferriss, in Tools of Titans, I think he says Tools of Titans is a book he wrote, which is a summary of many of his podcast interviews. It's like a synthesis. It's condensed versions of 150 interviews, something like that. And I think he says in there, the two most common consistent practices that I've observed across all these high performers, A is a regular exercise regimen, B is some kind of mindfulness practice. It's like 70% of people. So these are not incompatible. calming the mind, getting in touch with the emotions, processing the emotions, which tend to limit us and tend to be disruptive, these make us more effective in the world, not less. The question is, when does a person over-index on this? And then it's not actually making any progress. That I don't know. But I don't buy the premise that these things are incompatible. Moreover, I'll give you an example. There's a guy named Ray Dalio, who is arguably the most successful hedge fund manager of all time. He used to run at least the biggest hedge fund. And he has a regular transcendental meditation practice that he's been doing for like 40 years. So he didn't start TM after he became a billionaire. He's been doing TM the whole time. There's many, many stories like this. Many.
I think the question is like on the timing of it. It's like, and we don't know this necessarily unless we were to like read or listen to all of their podcasts or audiobooks or books, but of the timing of it. Like, did he go to TM after he already or while he was on the on-ramp of success, or was he doing it while he was actually in his early stages? That's something that I'm curious about, because the people in Tools of Titans.
Does it matter?
I can see that some people would say that yes, it does matter, that the competitive edge, I know Tim has talked about this, it's like a lot of people view the voice of ambition as like, which can sometimes like veer, it's like ambition and I want to call it tyranny. Like, I feel like extreme ambition and tyranny can kind of sound like a similar voice, at least it has for me. And that is a competitive edge that can then propel somebody into like what would be considered unusual success. And that there can be then a fear of managing that voice or relating to that voice differently for fear of not actually realizing the potential that voice is steering one towards.
I don't buy the premise. So I don't think incorporating some kind of mindfulness, meditation, or internal somatic, whatever you want to call it, I don't think these practices have any downside, in my opinion. But granted, I've only done one type of emotional work. It happens to work for me. And then with meditation, I have experience with a number of different modalities. As you know, I teach yoga nidra at my house. But like, these practices have no downside. So like, what are we talking about? We're talking about 2 hours a week doing emotional work. I don't think that has I think the upside way outweighs the downside. If this was the work that got my friends to quit W-2 jobs and start companies, like, what more do you want? That's point number one. Or for the lawyer and the software engineer to quit their steady W-2 jobs and take a massive risk to go into therapy to fulfill their life passion. That's also a major risk. I admire that. And then the other view is like, let's say you take 30 or 45 minutes a day to do meditation. What is the downside? Like, I just don't buy the premise. We're talking about a practice which probably 99% of people agree is net beneficial. Now, if you're spending 5 hours a day meditating and you want to up it to 6, and yet you have an ambition of starting a company, that is you failing to confront your fear of doing the difficult things that you don't understand and staying paralyzed in the familiar. If your ambition is to become a monk, then yes, you do need to up it from 5 to 6. All of these people have ambitions or goals or things that their internal self wants them to do. The question is, are you doing the practices that support that goal or not? And if your goal is to build a great company, well, guess what? Exercise is going to help you. Sleeping well is going to help you. Eating right is going to help you. Getting meditation is going to help you. Having a therapist or an executive coach is going to help you. Period.
Yeah. And it's just, I think the key thing that you pointed to is the containment around it. Well, I think one of the key things, one is the aim that you have, like what is your actual goal? And then 2, what is necessary to achieve that goal? And then within that, what is the containment around a self-reflective, self-development practice that makes sense to you achieving that vision? And if you want to start a huge company that's going to be an anomaly in the world, then you're not going to want to spend maybe even like 2 hours a week. It might be like 1 hour a week, but it is just finding, I think, a practice that does suit your goals and your disposition. Because it's also like, what do you actually need? And how much work have you actually already done? Because like for you, you're like, I'm emptied out. I don't even have emotional things I'm processing. But that's not where a lot of people are.
So many people get stuck with what's comfortable and what's familiar. It's not human nature to take risks and do things, put ourselves into difficult, uncomfortable situations. And yet that is often what's necessary for growth, period.
Love it. Let's go into closing questions. What makes you feel rich in work and life?
Definitely difficult questions, difficult systems. Finance is one of those things. So one thing I'm trying to figure out is, where does inflation really come from? I don't know. There's a lot of theories, but nobody knows for sure. Another question is, where do interest rates come from? I don't know. Do people just arbitrarily decide what they should be? Are they set by the market? I don't know. So I'm reading a book on the history of interest rates. I'm actually reading 2 books on it. So that feels, I recently came across a question. I was listening to a podcast. I can't remember what it was. And one of the guests asked, what would you do if you knew you would fail? It was Seth Godin. He said, what would you do if you knew you would fail? Not if you knew you would succeed. My instant answer is, I think I'd still study finance and economics, because it feels like a journey worth being on, even if I'm not going to figure it out. And I won't. Like, I actually know I will fail. I know I will. I won't find the answer to these questions. But they're questions worth studying anyway. So that for me is richness. And then the other thing that makes me feel rich is the people in my life. You're one of those people, my students, my family, my friends, etc. So I get a lot from the interaction with the person. And I prefer it on these topics that I know well, whether it's internal development or it's teaching in the classroom. But the mix of those two, the study plus the communication, is what I need.
I mean, that is it's your inner world and the richness that you find in it, and then sharing that richness with other people and also receiving their richness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I this isn't a closing question, but I would just have to ask, what is it about finance that you find to be so interesting?
I wrote a piece about this, not about finance specifically, but what childhood interests mean for us. And I encourage my students to do this all the time. I always ask them, so out of all the subjects, which ones did you like? And can you pay attention to that? As opposed to backfilling, I want to make a career where I make $250K and then backfilling from that. That's just not how I operate. I operate with, what do I like? And then how can I deploy what I like in a way that gets me paid? So I start with what's true for me. What's the truth? And when I look back on it, in high school, economics and government were my 2 favorite classes. And then when I majored in business as a freshman, my favorite subject was finance. I should have majored in finance. I didn't. It took me a long time to crystallize. We were required to read the Wall Street Journal in school, and I never read it. But once in a while, the only page I would read would be the finance and investing section. That should have been a clue that, like, out of this business world, this is the part that I have a much greater appreciation of all these business disciplines now than I did when I was a student, marketing being number one. But I had the clues back then. I just didn't pay attention to them. It wasn't until when I was 30 years old, that I realized this is the stuff I like the most. This is when I was a consultant and I did a lot of bond related work. I was like, I get this. A, I get the math, and B, I feel like I can explain it to other people. So how do I turn this into a career?
Yeah. So I think to answer, or just to clarify, like the answer to my question is, like, it's just something you're interested in finance because it's just something that has fascinated you. It doesn't even necessarily have a reason. It's just like that intrinsic attraction to the subject that resonates with you and that you want to continue to feed.
And B, for me, is it's a very complex system. I think there are other complex systems that I could have been interested in. This has just happened to be the one that caught my attention when I was in high school, 15. So maybe in a different world, I could have been fascinated by some other subject. I don't know.
How would you describe your essence or purpose?
Learning and communicating what I learn, which I do. I do that every day.
That's literally your job.
That's my job.
And it's like how you are, I think, even as a friend. Like it really is a part of you.
That's why I say, like, I tell people, I cannot believe that I get paid to do what I do. Like, I would do it for free. I do it for free.
Well, and I think too, I was listening to Ashley's podcast, Ashley of Seeking Joy, the interview that you had with her, where you were just talking about your approach to teaching too. It's not even just that you're trying to teach your students about financial concepts. Like, you're trying to teach them how to be adults who are satisfied with their lives, essentially, how to overcome their fears. And I think it's this quality that you seem to have of like recognizing the potential in other people, even if they don't recognize it themselves, being able to name it and also help identify opportunities to take steps towards that actualization of their potential. I'm sure makes you like an amazing teacher. Like, I wish you were one of my college professors. Like, yeah.
My class is fun, dude. People love it.
I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I think in that interview, you're even saying something like, you're like, hey guys, this is like, I don't even know what the class is called. It's like a finance. What is the class called?
It's Money and Capital Markets is the class.
Money and Capital Markets is the name of the class. And you're saying, hey guys, I don't actually care if you learn anything about like finance. And we're going to talk about these things, but I don't care that you learn about this. I actually want you to learn how to like develop basically like social skills, interpersonal skills, inner knowledge and confidence to be able to be effective out in the world once you're out of this college classroom. And I think that's just so sick.
Yeah, I tell them that on the first day. I don't care what you learn.
Yeah. And you mean it. It's just like, it's so great.
But they learn a ton. A lot of that is
just,
it's the attitude of safety that I aim to create in the classroom. So the class also starts emotions first. Yeah. When I get the emotional container right in the classroom, the learning just takes off. It takes off like a rocket. And I feel like people don't appreciate this quality enough. These are finance majors. These are people working on Wall Street.
I think it's like the safety that you cultivate for people to choose their own paths and to also know that the path that they've currently chosen doesn't need to be their only path.
Yeah.
Which is so, I think that's just a beautiful thing to impart on college students who are entering the world beyond an educational system. Okay, last question. Where can people find and connect with you?
AkashKanojia.com. I have a blog and a newsletter. Encourage you to hit that like and subscribe button. And then hopefully this summer, I'm going to be starting to put stuff on YouTube. So that'll also be on a channel called Akash Kanojia. And it'll probably be finance content. So market discussions, playing with what exactly that's going to look like. But it'll be an outgrowth of what I do in the class anyway, just over the summer.
That sounds awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate you.
Thank you. This was fun. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, everyone. See you in the next one. Thank you so much for listening to Rich Souls. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, I would love to hear what one key takeaway is that you got from it in the comments, wherever you're listening to this. If you have any topics or guests that you'd like to see on, feel free to shoot them my way, either in the comment or you can reach out to me on Instagram. And lastly, it would mean so much to me if you were to take just a couple of seconds and rate this podcast. Thank you. See you in the next one.